Okay guys, this will be your practice problem. Um, this is all I want to do from this section. Just know those steps in finding all the zeros. So take several minutes. It's going to take a little while to find all the zeros of this function step by step. Okay? Good. Pause the video and take your time to do that. I'm going to put up the answer. Alright. I'm just going to kind of go through a slide, pinpoint some things. Step 1 is to list all the possible rational zeros. Why do we do this? Why do we list all the possible rational zeros? Because let's look at step 2, looking at the graph. Okay, you see these. Let me get my pen here. Here's a 0. Here's 1. Here's 1. And here's 1. What we could do is we can narrow that whole big list to just a few. You know, this is like 1, 2. This is 2 point something. So look back at your list and say which one of those is about 2 point something. Well, maybe that's the 12/5 one. Okay, could be. We don't know. Look at this one. It's in between 0 and 1, so that can be 0.6 around there. So look in my list, my big long list, there was 3/5. So that point right there could be 3/5. Look over here. That's about halfway in between. So I think that should have been -1/2. And then this last one is like 1 point something past halfway. So right around halfway. -3/2. That's where they come up with these 4 values. Basically, we're just kind of cutting down our list into what we think it could be, what the reasonable answers could be. Okay, so you could, what I would do is I would calculate each one. So I would calculate that one and see what I'd get. I would calculate this one, see what I get. And some of those answers, they're going to be weird decimals, which means those are irrational numbers. You can't get the answer from that. So you got to go to the next zero, until you get a nice fraction one, like 3/5 is 0.6 or 12/5 is 2.4, something like that. Okay, but when you get a big long decimal, it's irrational, which means you can't use it. Okay, so next, what the book does is they test those things. So we narrowed it down to 4 things it could be. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we test each of those. That's what they're doing. So they test -3/2, and look what happens. The remainder is not 0, which means -3/2 is not a 0 of the function. So -3/2 is out of the picture. So then I go to another one, -1/2. Okay, and if you use synthetic division, it is a 0. So since that's a 0, that means x minus r, which is x plus 1/2, is a factor. Okay, but you could have got another factor by now. It has a few, so that might not have been the one you got, and that's okay. But as long as you keep working at it. Okay, so if that's a factor, if x plus 1/2 is a factor, here is the other factor. Now, what do you notice about these numbers right here? I mean, it means 10x to the, what is this, third power, minus 16x squared, minus 34x plus 24. They're all divisible by 2, right? That's why this factor isn't really x plus 1/2. If we factor out a 2 out of all this, 5x cubed minus 8x squared minus 17x plus 12. And then the factor of x plus 1/2 down here. I'll just put it down here. But then what we would do is take that 2 and we would distribute it. And our new factor would be 2x plus 2 times 1/2 is 1. So our new factor is 2x plus 1. Notice the shortcut. I can just kind of take that 2 and put it out front here. So there's a factor, and here's my new factor. Okay, so these two multiply to get the original on the first slide. Now, what you want to do is you want to take this new factor and you want to kind of like start over. Okay, so find zeros of that new factor. Okay, so type that in your calculator. If you didn't do that, I would type that in your calculator and I would try to find some more zeros. You're not you're not going to find any nice ones in the table. So you're going to have to work for it. So go hit second calculate and find another zero, okay, of this. When you do that, let's see, step 4. So this is what I did just a minute ago. Pulled out the 2, and this is what we have so far. So what you want to do is you want to take this new factor and then find the zeros of it. Type it in and look for some zeros. Now what they do is they do step 1 again, which I did tell you to do, but it's not like you have to do this step, but they found all the possibilities again, so we can narrow down our list by the graph. Okay, so then we type it in and we go to the graph, which they don't show it, but the graph shows, they just tell you in words, the graph shows that 3/5 could be a 0. Now what they do is, so if it could be, that's why they would do 3/5 here, and they would do that on this guy right here, and in the end it will show that 3/5 is a 0 if you did the work. Okay, so if 3/5 is a 0, then you're gonna have some things left over. So let's get there. So far what do we have? From the calculator, the first 0 we got was what? 1 negative a half. So far we got negative 1/2 is a 0. Next we use that, we got this, and then we find a 0 of this to be 3/5. So far we got negative 1/2 and 3/5. You have to figure out what you have left over. So hopefully the next slide shows this, and it does right here. You would have left this. So just let me do this real quick. 3/5 in the box. Over here should be 5x cubed minus 8x squared minus 17x plus 12. So 5 multiply, you get 3, you get negative 5. You add, or multiply, you get negative 3. Then you get negative 20, and you multiply and you get negative 12, which you'll notice the 0 here, which means 3/5 is a 0, which means x minus 3/5 is a factor. And then so they pulled that factor out. That factor times this guy right here gives you this up here. Okay, so but notice, what do you notice about that thing? They're all divisible by 5, so they're going to pull that 5 out, right? And then multiply it to this, which then you get 5x minus 3, and then x squared minus x minus 4. Okay, almost done. Now, here's your other factor. So far your zeros are negative 1/2, and this would give you the zeros of positive 3/5. We're looking for a couple more zeros, so that's where this comes into play. First thing I look for, does it factor? Factors are negative 4, they add up to negative 1, and it does not factor. So therefore you have to use the quadratic formula, and I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to assume that you can use quadratic formula on this guy right here. Okay, well, I guess it'll show you quadratic formula. Step 6, find the remaining zeros by quadratic formula. There it is. And there is your answers for the last quadratic. Put all your answers together. We got this from the calculator. We got a new polynomial, which then we got this from the calculator. And then we did synthetic again, and that's where these two come from after we did the quadratic formula. So that's how you find the zeros of a polynomial. You guys got questions, you know where to find me. Okay? You have a good day, and I will see you soon.